Welcome to the program. He was the world's most wanted man, the criminal mastermind behind the terrorist organisation Al-Qaeda. The 9/11 terrorist attacks made Osama bin Laden and his group household names, even though they were on the US radar well before that. Starting with the 1998 bombings of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates have killed tens of thousands of people worldwide. After the 2001 terrorist attacks, the then US President, George W. Bush, vowed to catch bin Laden dead or alive. But it's his successor, Barack Obama, who almost a decade later has finally seen that mission to conclusion. The American president made a highly unusual late-night address to his nation in which he detailed how the operation was carried out.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body. For over 2 decades, bin Laden has been Al-Qaeda's leader and symbol, and has continued to plot attacks against our country and our friends and allies. The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda. Yet his death does not mark the end of our effort. There is no doubt that Al-Qaeda will continue to pursue attacks against us. We must, and we will, remain vigilant at home and abroad. As we do, we must also reaffirm that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. I've made clear, just as President Bush did shortly after 9/11, that our war is not against Islam. Bin Laden was not a Muslim leader. He was a mass murderer of Muslims. Indeed, Al-Qaeda has slaughtered scores of Muslims in many countries, including our own. So his demise should be welcomed by all who believe in peace and human dignity. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done. Finally, let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss, nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores. And tonight, let us think back to the sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. I know that it has at times frayed, yet today's achievement is a testament to the greatness of our country and the determination of the American people. The cause of securing our country is not complete, but tonight we are once again reminded that America can do whatever we set our mind to. That is the story of our history. Whether it's the pursuit of prosperity for our people or the struggle for equality for all our citizens, our commitment to stand up for our values abroad, and our sacrifices to make the world a safer place. Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The world's congratulated President Obama on assassinating bin Laden. The terrorist had evaded capture for years despite a $25 million bounty on his head. He taunted the West with messages promoting his jihad and worked to make al-Qaeda the most feared terrorist group in the world. Matt Peacock reports.
Near midnight outside the White House, excited crowds gathered to greet the news. America's #1 fugitive had finally been tracked down and killed.
Osama was certainly an important symbol, the most widely hunted terrorist in history of the world, being up against the CIA, NSA, and many other very capable and well-resourced agencies, being able to avoid capture for 10 years. And being finally killed, of course, that is highly symbolic.
Al-Qaeda hasn't really come to an end as a result of Osama bin Laden coming to an end.
It's nearly 10 years since the biggest terrorist attack on US soil killed more than 3,000 people and directly triggered US military action in Afghanistan that continues to this day.
We will find those who did it. We will smoke them out of their holes. We will get them running, and we'll bring them to justice.
But despite overwhelming force and a coalition of allies, the United States failed to find the al-Qaeda leader in the remote labyrinth of tunnels and caves that riddled the Afghanistan-Pakistani border where he was believed to be hiding. What was worse, Osama bin Laden continued to taunt the US with smuggled videotapes broadcast widely across the Arab world. The son of a wealthy businessman, bin Laden was born in Saudi Arabia in 1957, joining the partly US-financed jihad against Soviet troops in Afghanistan before turning against his own country's ruling elite. A string of attacks against US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya and against the USS Cole off Yemen preceded al-Qaeda's World Trade Center attack.
He was the first major Islamic terrorist who dared to think big and had the ability to carry that out. Right? He dared to organize massive operations, multiple attacks simultaneously, and to attack the US in its heartland.
9/11 demonstrated that a fairly small organization with less than $500,000 can really change the course of action that the world's greatest superpower will take.
But Osama bin Laden's death won't stop and nonetheless weakened al-Qaeda's operations, believes terrorism expert Dr. Adam Dolnick.
Al-Qaeda has gone way past Osama bin Laden already since 9/11. The group has decentralized, it has adjusted its structure to the manhunt, very massive manhunt that existed. Many of the attacks that we have seen, like the 7/7 bombings in 2005 in London, the 3/11 bombings in Madrid, all of these were conducted by people who did not swear the bayat, the oath to bin Laden, never met him personally, jumped on the bandwagon of the ideology and perpetrated attacks on behalf of Al-Qaeda.
A small helicopter mission of US forces attacked Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, just north of the Pakistani capital, Islamabad.
The US going in the way it did, with Navy SEALs in a firefight, indicates two things. First, they were extremely confident about their intelligence. And second, they wanted to make sure he was dead.
It's an area where people often pass through for going to tourist destinations like Gilgit and Baltistan. And I would have expected him to be somewhere closer to the border, but the fact that he wasn't there, but in an area which has a very strong military presence, was quite a surprise. Also, the fact that it was so close to Islamabad, the seat of Pakistani government, together made it quite significant for me as the site where he was hiding.
Bin Laden's death in Pakistan could provoke not only a backlash from US hawks, but also trigger instability in the already shaky Pakistani governments, according to the University of Western Australia's Dr. Samina Yasmeen, a specialist on South Asian terrorism.
The fact that he was found in Abbottabad means that there's a strong connection between sections in the military in Pakistan and militants, and therefore Pakistan can't be trusted. But for others, taking cue from what President Obama said, the fact that Pakistanis had some support for this endeavor could be seen as an indication that there are groups within Pakistan that are willing to support the United States agenda.
Ironically, it's been people power, not terrorism, that's recently seen the collapse of many of the Arab dictatorships Al-Qaeda opposed. But even in death, Osama bin Laden's legacy will live on.
For those who consider him a terrorist, he was an example of the militant tendencies in Islam, and those who considered him to be a hero, he was identified as the personification of what the whole jihadi spirit stands in Islam.
Matt Peacock reporting.